Hi, that was a little glitch, I'm sorry. Welcome back to another live feed. I am in total live stream pro mode. This is my my second time, but I already feel like a pro. So thank you for joining me. And hi, I'm just gonna check the chat and see who is here. Hi, Taylor, Libby, and Barbara's here. Hi, Kelly and Lee. Good morning. It is, I think, 5 a.m. over there. So great, thank you all for joining me. I actually realized as I was planning my stream on YouTube that tonight is also the night that Dylan Sarah hosts his drawing together thing, which no one should miss. So I will in the future avoid to plan my live streams on a Thursday because I actually like watching Dylan paint and draw with people. So I'm sorry, Dylan. Yeah, okay, let's calm down. Hi, Linda. That's nice of you to be here. Tonight, I wanted to just do a different eye. I made a joke about building an eye collection, but I actually have an eye collection. it's a bit weird. But I wanted to do it in oil paint as some of you requested in the group. So we can go ahead and do that. I have the supply list on my page, but it's very simple. Just going to go ahead and switch to my working. And then we have me. And then we also have a reference photo. There we go. So, before we get started, I wanted to tell you a little bit about my oil paint experience, if you will, or lack thereof, while I go ahead and put my paint on, which is, let's see where we're at, a limited palette of black, that should be enough, and some burnt sienna, that's over here, and some titanium white. And I have this titanium white from Gamblin, which is from their student range. And I quite like it because it's a little lower in tinting strength than their regular titanium white, which can be quite overpowering. And then I have a little bit of linseed oil, and I put that stuff in the cup, no, not the cup, the cap of my Diet Coke bottles. I take off the cap because they're very small, and you can stick them on your work surface if you want with a little bit of tape, and they're great for little amounts of linseed oil. Just gonna get my reference photo ready, and I have this ivory pointed round, which is it's a number 3, but it's really not that important. So what we're gonna do today is just paint a little bit for an hour, and this is what is called direct painting in oil paint. And the reason I'm mentioning it, because I actually struggled quite a bit, and I still do struggle a lot with all the rules that suddenly pop up when you start oil painting. And I remember when I started just painting in general, really. I remember I started with watercolors actually, which is funny. And then I figured that I was gonna paint something real, if you will. Yeah, so I have seen my grandmother paint with oil paints. My grandmother painted exclusively with oil paints. So to me that made sense. So I grabbed a bunch of oil paints and I started painting. And I think I had a little bit of linseed oil because I remember the paint being quite stiff. And so it's the same thing that I'm doing right now. And I'd never ever heard of fat over lean or anything like that. Never. And then I wanted to work with acrylics for some reason, don't know why. So I took some courses in that because I remember the first time I put acrylic paint on my surface, I went to the bathroom and I came back and it was dry. I was like, what happened? This is not supposed to happen. And I actually thought that my paint was faulty or something. And it turned out that that is the way acrylics behaved. And I actually didn't like that. I remember thinking, yeah, I'm going to go back to oils. And, you know, long story short, I ended up not using oil paint for a very long time. And part of the reason why was because I started reading up on it and I got almost, overwhelmed. I got overwhelmed with the amount of rules that apparently I was supposed to follow, but I kind of forgot to follow. So that ended my oil painting career. Now, recently I have picked it back up. And I wanted to tell you this now, is that this way of painting, the way we're painting right now, is a pretty rule-free way of painting. And they call it direct painting, which basically means in one session, right? So wet and wet, alla prima, whatever you want to call it. But the opposite is indirect painting. Indirect painting meaning painting in layers. And when you work with acrylics, you don't worry that much about, it's a little too dark. You don't worry that much about direct, indirect, you know, stuff is dry after what, 20 minutes? So I took that idea, I think, with me to oil paint, and that was, well, not how it works. Okay, long story short, that's not how it works. So, indirect painting in oil paint, painting in layers, requires planning and, yeah, also knowledge of those rules. So what I was thinking was, in a little while, yeah, maybe in a couple of months, we can do sort of a indirect portrait live during a couple of sessions, yeah, maybe 3 or 4, however long it's going to take, and then discuss those rules that they call fat over lean while we're doing it. And in the meantime, you can use, don't use too much linseed oil. Yeah, you don't want your paint to become drippy or too fluid, too slippery. I'm just gonna go check the chat for a little bit. All more people came in. Hi everyone. Yeah, okay, that's good, Libby. We can do that. I think you would like that. Hi, Suzanne. Okay, so back to this eye. Actually, I don't want to call myself stupid all the time, but I spent half the day setting up my live stream, and then I forget to put an extra layer of gesso on my canvas. So now it's super rough and absorbing all my paint, but we'll get there, don't worry. Right, so this palette is great, and I think you've seen me using it before. I use it in acrylics. I like it. It's almost a Zorn palette minus the yellow, right? So it's a really great way to start. And basically you have two choices in terms of chroma, in terms of color. You can either make something more red with the burnt sienna, or you can make something more gray with the black, right? So you have cooler tones and you have warmer tones. And then you can go light and you can go dark, and those are the only 4 options basically that you have, which is great sometimes, right? Not too many choices. If you were to add a yellow, say you can use a yellow ochre, or you can use a yellow, whatever, cadmium, Hansa, whatever you want, and replace the burnt sienna maybe with an actual red, because burnt sienna is not an actual red. You would have a Zorn palette. just gonna go and cover a few areas so there is some paint to work with. I'm actually not comfortable enough to apply very thick strokes when I work like this. So I try and build my layers slowly. And I know that some of you are working in acrylics. If you're working in acrylics, it's probably better if you apply your paint a little bit more generously. Great. I'm glad you're enthusiastic. Because I was thinking about doing some indirect painting for a while. I needed to get some things straight, because I'm still learning myself, and I sometimes I feel like I'm wading through these amounts of information, and everyone's saying, some people are saying this and some people are saying that. Some people are also forgetting whole blocks of information, like basic information, that I find, quite difficult to fill in. And I think you remember me posting a while back about some stuff, but basically just feeling insecure. And part of that had to do with, the fact that you just feel alone sometimes, and a bit overwhelmed. And I'm also not, it's probably going to sound really stupid, but I'm just not confident enough to go and ask someone that I admire, for instance, on Instagram, people with a lot of experience. I don't have the attitude to go and ask them stuff that I think that, it might be really basic stuff. So I try to figure that out on my own. And I got a little bit discouraged a while back. Yeah, I actually know you feel the same, Suzanne. The rabbit hole, I think, is a good description of what that is. And also what I've found is that I've gotten quite used to the art community that I think a lot of us are part of, which is an art community that is focused on allowing people to enjoy their art, right? And also embracing different materials and different techniques without a whole lot of rules. And when you go to some other communities that are a little bit more about traditional painting, and oil painting is a traditional form of painting, the tone of voice can be quite different, and I for me personally, can feel a little bit intimidating at times. Okay, so that may also have contributed to that feeling, that feeling of being overwhelmed. Yeah, I need to focus on my eye just a little bit. One day I'm gonna learn how to paint and talk at the same time. I actually agreed to do a live for, let's face it, this year. I think I'm actually allowed to say that now, seeing how it's been announced. So you'll probably see me live there as well. I'm just gonna lean a little bit. Yeah, I know what you mean. So that I just, well, I know, you know. Hi there, from Greece. That is great. That is a great country. All right, let's see where we're at. Just gonna grab my bottle. Yeah. Let's get a little bit of structure in that eye. So the reason I'm not starting with pure black is because pure black is just gonna, if you wanna change it, blend it, or whatever, it's gonna go everywhere. So I try to do the underpainting, if you will, with a sort of a dark burnt sienna. I also mix a little bit of burnt sienna with a little bit of black. Okay, so here's another thing that I learned. I'm just going to share some stuff that I learned. And by learned, I mean I figured it out. And then I tore some of my hair out and cried in my bed, and then started painting again. So here's the thing. I love burnt umber. Burnt umber. Burnt umber is a huge favorite of mine. I have burnt umber in acrylics. I have burnt umber in soft pastels. I have just burnt umber, yay. So I had some burnt umber oil paint, right? Great. Until I read that people don't use burnt umber. And the way they say it is more like avoid burnt umber at all costs. So I was like, oh no, what did I do? So it turns out it has something to do with oil sinking in, I don't even know. But that for me, it was like the fourth thing that week about oil paint. And for me it illustrates a little bit. I don't know why I put that there. It illustrates a little bit the struggle sometimes I have with oil paint, that every time you want to do something or you like something, there is a thing or a rule in your way. So it turns out that burnt umber is an oil paint color that has a tendency to sink in. Sinking in is a thing that you don't have in acrylic paint. There's no sinking in. I had to Google that to find out that it can cause an array of problems. So goodbye burnt umber, right? All right. It sounds like I'm never having fun painting, but I do. I do have fun. But I do like to know the rules of the game, if you will. Okay, I'm gonna switch brushes. Yeah, I'm sorry, Suzanne. Burnt umber is just can't do it. I'm gonna switch. I have another sort of roundish brush because I want to add some lighter paint here. And I'm a little bit worried I'm going to contaminate it. So where's my reference? go. Now I can breathe. So sometimes when you paint wrinkles, oh, we'll have fun at work, Barbara. Thank you for joining for a little while. And you can watch the replay if you want later on. Let's check the, I'm just gonna finish what I started saying. So sometimes when you paint wrinkles, we have a tendency to draw them in dark, with dark lines. And you can start out like that, but very often dark lines look like dark lines and not like folds or wrinkles. So what you can then do is actually paint the fold in a skin by painting the lighter areas on top of that wrinkle. Is that making sense? Right? You just saw me do it. Because a fold, a wrinkle, is often, it's both shadow and light, right? So if you only draw the shadow or you only paint the shadow, then it's going to look very flat, very two-dimensional, one-dimensional, whatever. So when you add the light on top, you get that feeling of depth, right? Let's see, chat. Have you had any luck creating a rough sketch with another fine charcoal makes a mess? Yeah, so I use a little bit of charcoal. Sometimes I use charcoal, and before I start painting, I wipe it off, which usually on acrylic gesso ground will leave sort of a ghost image. Yeah. You can of course use pencil. There are some people saying that oil paint becomes more transparent over like a gazillion years, but I don't know. I'm gonna be dead in about 50 years from now, so probably not gonna live to see it. So you can use pencil if you want. And if you like it, or yeah, I don't know, an option is acrylic paint. Yeah, you can use diluted acrylic paint as an under painting or an under sketch, whatever you want. You can also use golden open, which actually leaves you a little bit more time to make corrections if you want. And then the other option, yeah, is to sketch with oil paint, which is maybe even easier than golden open, because, you know, it stays open. So you can use raw umber if you want. Yeah, if you want it to dry faster, you can use mediums. But honestly, for me, starting a sketch, most of the time I think I use fine charcoal and then wipe it off. Alright. That's not clean. Thank you guys. Thank you. You're the cutest. I'm just gonna add a little bit of structure around it. I'm trying to play a little bit with those warmer and cooler zones. It can be a little tricky sometimes, you know, with photo editing. I feel like sometimes some photos are so over edited that it's not really showing accurate light conditions. But in general, warmer areas are areas where the skin is a little bit thinner. So you often see red areas here around the eyes, yeah, but also at the nostril, because a lot of light passes through. Also here, the edge of the ear often, and also when you look at your hand, if you just look at your hand, you can identify certain red parts. The light is horrible now, but certain red parts, and then certain bluer parts, if you will. So even with a extremely limited palette, such as this, you can learn a lot of things about human flesh and skin tone. By simply trying to identify the warmer and the cooler areas. Cool, right? Okay, let's work on that eyebrow for a little bit. Put a little bit of light up there. So the eyebrow is very rarely one blocked in shape, unless you have a lot of makeup on. But very often you can see the skin through areas of the hair. So sometimes it can be important to add a little bit of skin tone underneath the area where you're going to paint the eyebrow. So you can kind of paint into the skin if you want. Hi Virgie, thank you for joining. I'm also always late with live streams. I don't know why. It actually reminds me a little bit, I was thinking recently, it reminds me a little bit of old school TV, where you were actually sitting waiting for a show to start, which is a concept that my son does not understand anymore. So I was waiting, I think, 2 weeks ago for Dylan Sarah to start his live stream, and suddenly I was like, oh, I remember this. Waiting for a TV show to start. Okay, so let's see, a couple of things that need a little bit of correcting. I will say I started this live stream off by whining and complaining about oil paint, but you know, this is one of the great things about this medium. You can paint for, let's see, 45 minutes and still have completely open paint, which is great. That's Dylan Sarah. Sara. Yeah. Dylan Sarah. I will put it in the chat. Dylan. Oh, I'm really happy to hear that, Libby, because I heard people not starting oil paint because of a solvent issue. And I actually recall my grandmother, I think, at some point, not using turpentine anymore because it gave her a headache. And because my grandmother was wise beyond her time, so she would wash them with soap. And I mean, it makes sense, right? When you think about it, it's oil. I did the dishes for 25 years with soap. And trust me, I washed the most grossest frying pans or whatever. Seriously, it's nothing compared to a little brush with a little bit of oil paint in it. So, yeah. We need to spread the word, you know? This whole turpentine business needs to go. That sounded really radical. I didn't mean it like that. I dip my brushes, yeah, in the oil. Yeah, dip your brushes in oil. You know, you can keep them like that for a little, not for a little while, for quite a while, actually. Trying to get that shape of the area under the eyebrow. Try to model that a little bit. It's not always the easiest shape to get right. And here's, I think, another thing that I like like about oil paint is that you can move it around, almost as if you were sculpting. Yeah, sculpting with clay, and use the paint that you have on your canvas in conjunction with the paint that you have on your brush, and change shapes that you need to change by simply pushing paint around. If you find yourself with too much paint on your canvas, which is something that can happen when you work like this directly in one layer, you can get a Q-tip or get a paper towel and put a point in it and try and wipe off some of the paint. And then when you paint over that with, say, a lighter color, it doesn't mix as much. It doesn't disappear into the layer that is already there. Okay, I think we're closing in the end. Trying to get some final touches here and there. And also, we can try, burnt sienna is a really great pigment for this. Burnt sienna is a transparent pigment, usually. So it can add, even in wet paintings, it can add a little bit of glow, when you apply it directly, especially in the area between a very dark shadow and a mid-tone, and that transition often is a little bit more saturated. And you can try and it isn't glazing what we're doing, it's just adding paint, really. And try and get that in there a little bit and make that transition from the very dark edge of the eye to the eyelid a little bit more glowing. And I feel like if you mix this, if you blend this blacker area with the area above on your canvas, you're going to mix that black into your lighter area, creating grays. Let's try. And there we go. So let me check the chat. Thank you, Suzanne. Kelly, I keep having that issue with bumping into the black. Yeah. Yeah, so black, even if you have a low tinting black, is overpowering, which is the reason why people say don't use black on your palette. The reason is because black is something that you need to learn how to use. If you use too much of it, it's going to be very difficult to get the chroma back into whatever mixture you have. So very often also with a palette like this, whenever you have a midtone that is too gray, I would recommend starting again, starting a new mix, because you have to add a ton of burnt sienna in order to get that chroma back. And with oil paint on your canvas, the risk, this is why I don't start with pure black painting and underpainting, because you're going to touch that black and it's going to dominate everything that that sits on top of it and that mixes with it, which is a shame, especially considering that burnt sienna is not a very high chroma from the tube. Okay, so black, again, I like it. Be careful, and maybe if you have trouble with that, you know, touching the black, try and work with a dark brown first, yeah, and then leave the absolute blacks for last. So now we can, for instance, we're done, or at least I'm calling it done. Yeah, now we can add, if we wanted some black here, that we can do. So all the way in the end. So basically you limit your value scale to about a 9. And then in the end you can push the dark areas. I can fiddle with this for another hour. Let's see. Thank you, Taylor, for joining. Suzanne, yeah, burnt sienna. It's not the U.S. where it varies. Burnt sienna varies a lot. Burnt sienna is an earth pigment, as they call it, and it's basically, I think, what you get when you take raw sienna and then you heat it. Yeah. That raw sienna can have a lot of different sources. So, for instance, I have where is it here? Italian burnt sienna. The only thing that's telling me is that it's from Italy, right? And you will see on the back, it will always, almost always, be the same pigment. And there are some different pigments that call themselves burnt sienna, so, right? There is a lot of variation in it. The only thing that I want from my burnt sienna is that it's a transparent pigment. I cannot work with opaque burnt siennas. Everything else you need to try for yourself, really. So try some different brands, and yes, stick with the brand that you like. But earth pigments can vary a lot. Same goes for burnt umber, raw umber, etc., etc. It really is never the same. So it's not you, it's not the U.S. It's just a thing. So yeah. Let's can we switch? There we go. Look at my promo. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed this this live stream. I'm gonna think about this whole indirect painting thingy that we have talked about. That maybe we can do that. I'm not an expert. I'm not even close to being experienced in painting in general or in oil paint. So I don't have 20 years under my belt. I am an avid learner, and I'm also very stubborn. So what I do, and I think most of you know that, is I learn things. I get very angry offline, and then I come online and I try and share that, and I try and talk to you and to other people about this. So I do have some stuff that I learned and that I processed recently that I think I want to share with you. I think it's a good way to start understanding indirect painting in oil, right? Because it has certain advantages, but it also has certain disadvantages. So maybe we can talk about that the next time. This, again, was just oil paint and a little bit of linseed oil. Everything is in one layer, so everything is conform the fat over lean, whatever type of rule. I hope you enjoyed this, again, me rambling. Yeah, I'm just looking at the chat. Well, that's a lot of happy hearts. So if you have any questions after the live feed, you can drop them in the comments on YouTube, or you can drop them in comments on Facebook. I'm going to close this live stream now. Thank you for joining me. I will let you know when the next one is, and I will promise not to plan it on Thursday, because I kind of want to watch Dylan Sarah draw as well. So again, if you've never watched Dylan, he does a show on Thursday where he draws together with other really amazing people. So I love that moment where you can just watch other people draw and paint and talk, which is great. So Dylan, Sarah, I'm Sabra. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you in the next live stream. Have a good day. Bye bye.